A garden walled in stone, heavy with the scent of damp earth and blooming flowers. The gentle chime of silver bells, a row of impossibly perfect faces, still as porcelain dolls. These are the images that flicker behind one of the most famous rhymes in the English language. Mary, Mary, quite contrary. How does your garden grow? With silver bells and cockle shells. And pretty maids all in a row. It's a verse we learn in the cradle, a piece of innocent childhood architecture. But its foundations are not built on innocence. They are sunk deep into a soil of political intrigue, religious warfare, and blood. Welcome back, darklings. Nursery rhymes were the whispers of their time, a way for a largely illiterate populace to pass judgment on the powerful. They are a form of oral graffiti, scribbled onto the walls of memory, chronicling scandals and condemning tyrants in a language that could not be easily prosecuted. And the story of Mary is one of the most potent examples. To unravel it, we begin with the earliest firm sighting in print, 1744, in a small collection called Tommy Thumb's Pretty Song Book. This date is both our greatest clue and our greatest problem. It's an anchor, but it's dropped surprisingly late in the stream of history. The leading theories all point to queens who lived and died nearly 2 centuries earlier. This gap forces us to ask a difficult question. Is the rhyme a direct, surviving memory of their reigns, or something else entirely? A later invention that latched onto the convenient specters of 2 of history's most tragic and controversial monarchs. 2 women named Mary, both queens, both defined by their Catholic faith in an age of violent Protestant upheaval. One lost her head, the other her heart and her legacy. Their stories became public property, twisted into cautionary tales and encoded into verse. The rhyme becomes a cryptic obituary, its meaning shifting depending on which tombstone you read it over. So, whose story is it really? To seek an answer, we travel north, to a kingdom torn apart by faith and a throne occupied by a queen whose life was a tapestry of passion and betrayal. Our first candidate is Mary Stuart, Mary, Queen of Scots. Crowned when she was just 6 days old and raised in the lavish courts of France, she returns to her native Scotland in 1561, a young widow and a devout Catholic. She steps into a kingdom that is barely hers, a cold, gray landscape in the grip of a zealous Protestant Reformation. The preacher John knocks thunders from his pulpit, calling her a foreign idolater, and the Scottish lords watch her every move with suspicion. In their eyes, she is the very definition of contrary. The rhyme, viewed through this lens, reads like political satire. How does your garden grow? Becomes a pointed question about governance. How fares your unruly Catholic realm, your majesty? Or perhaps the garden is something more personal, a metaphor for her primary royal duty, the cultivation of a dynasty, an heir to secure her throne. It was a garden she tried to tend, but one that would be choked by the weeds of treason. The symbols that follow sharpen the portrait. Silver bells are not innocent decorations, but the bells of the Catholic Mass. Their sound a painful reminder to Protestant lords of the religion they had violently overthrown. They were the sound of defiance, ringing from her chapel at Holyrood Palace. And the cockle shells? The common theory links them to ornate embroidery on a gown given by her first husband, the King of France, but the symbolism reaches further. The cockle shell is the ancient badge of pilgrims, especially those who walked to the shrine of St. James. To wear them was to display allegiance to the old faith, a quiet act of rebellion woven into cloth. In this reading, the rhyme sketches a queen under siege. Her tastes, her fashions, and her faith are twisted into weapons and turned back on her. It's a coded summary of her foreignness, her Catholicism, her perceived vanity, a woman tending a garden of idolatry in a nation demanding austerity. But the most damning thread lies not in symbols of faith, but in a variant of the rhyme that points toward adultery, betrayal, and murder. The familiar version ends with pretty maids all in a row. A darker line survives elsewhere. Sing cuckolds all a row. There is no mistaking the insult. A cuckold is a man whose wife is unfaithful, a term of profound shame in the 16th century. If this variant is authentic to the period, it is more vicious than any jab at religious ritual. It shifts the focus from the queen's soul to her body, from public policy to private scandal. That accusation coils around the disastrous second marriage of Mary's life. In 1565, she weds her handsome cousin, Henry Stuart, Lord Darnley. Passion flames, then curdles. Darnley is arrogant, ambitious, and a heavy drinker. He demands to be made a king with equal authority, but Mary refuses to grant him the crown matrimonial. Resentment hardens to enmity. As the royal marriage crumbles, Mary leans on her private secretary, the Italian musician David Rizzio, charming, intelligent, fiercely loyal. He becomes her confidant in a court of enemies. Soon, the whispers begin. When Mary becomes pregnant, Darnley's jealousy is fanned by Protestant lords who insist the child is not his but Rizzio's. The rumor is a perfect weapon. It humiliates Darnley, undermines Mary's heir, and removes a Catholic influence from her side. Darnley's wounded pride becomes the mask for a political coup. The word cuckold clings to him in the shadows. With a cabal of nobles, he chooses blood over rumor. Here the record turns unsettling, as whispers erupt into calculated violence within the Queen's private rooms. On the night of March 9, 1566, the heavily pregnant Queen takes supper at Holyrood House. Rizzio is with her. Darnley enters, followed by armed men. Rizzio clings to Mary's skirts, but a pistol is pressed to her belly, and he is dragged away. Steele sings, the struggle ends in a chorus of screams. Rizzio is stabbed 56 times. Darnley's own dagger is left in the corpse like a signature. The coup is a masterpiece of cruelty and a failure of politics. It brings Darnley no power, only Mary's permanent, ice-cold hatred. Folklore loves symmetry. The murderer becomes the murdered. Almost a year later, on the night of February 10, 1567, a great explosion tears through Kirk-a-Field, the Edinburgh house where Darnley is convalescing. The building is reduced to rubble. Yet his body is found in a nearby garden with his valet, both unmarked by fire. They were strangled first. The blast was a theatrical veil for a more intimate killing. Who gave the order? Suspicion falls upon the Queen and her new favorite, James Hepburn, Earl of Bothwell. The city answers with pasquils, anonymous placards accusing Mary and Bothwell of adultery and murder. When official channels fail, the people carve their own verdict and paste it on the walls. Mary seals her fate by marrying Bothwell 3 months later, the man most believe killed her husband. That's the tale we were told. But set it aside for a moment. An older English echo is calling, pointing to a different queen, a different garden, and a colder kind of cruelty. We cross the border to meet our second suspect, Mary Tudor, Mary I, the only surviving child of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. History has given her a more infamous name, Bloody Mary. If ever a ruler was contrary, it was she. After the Protestant reforms of her father and brother, Mary takes the throne in 1553 with one unshakable aim: to wrench England back to the Catholic faith. Her 5-year reign is a war on heresy that will see hundreds burned at the stake. In this interpretation, the garden carries 2 meanings. The first is private and tragic. Desperate for an heir to secure a Catholic succession, the 38-year-old Queen marries Philip II of Spain. In 1555, the court announces that she is pregnant. The country celebrates. Months pass. No child appears. Mary has suffered a phantom pregnancy. Public joy sours to ridicule, a national humiliation for a queen who believed herself chosen. Her garden becomes her own barren womb, refusing to grow an heir. The second meaning is darker. The garden is England itself, a graveyard in which executions fertilize the earth. In this grim lexicon, silver bells are said to be thumbscrews, cockle shells, instruments of sexual torment. Pretty maids, an early beheading machine known as the maiden. It is a macabre and persuasive picture, yet here caution is essential. Mary's preferred instrument was the pyre, the flames of doctrinal purification. There is little direct evidence that she favored the specific devices the rhyme is alleged to encode. The theory feels like a Gothic embellishment, growing more lurid with each retelling. 2 queens, 2 reigns of tears and smoke, 2 compelling readings. But one detail hides in plain sight, a flaw that threatens them both. The date, 1744. Mary, Queen of Scots, dies in 1587. Mary I of England in 1558. Between their lives and the first printed rhyme stretches almost 2 centuries. Oral tradition can carry stories a long way, but a silence that deep can swallow almost anything. An unbroken chain of memory feels unlikely. So what remains? Perhaps the question, which Mary is it, is the wrong one. The rhyme may refer to neither queen directly. It may be a younger piece of folklore, born in the 18th century, that found the legends of troublesome Catholic queens to be perfect soil. Mary becomes an archetype, a composite specter. The verse is not a survivor from the 16th century, but a Gothic revival, an 18th century reflection cast onto the past. In the end, the rhyme's power may lie less in hidden biography than in the anxieties it mirrors. It speaks to suspicion of female sovereignty, to the terror of religious civil war, to the brutal arithmetic of court politics. The garden is not fixed in Scotland or England, but planted in our collective memory, where the seeds of fact and folklore grow so tightly together they cannot be cleanly separated. The verse endures not because it tells the true story of one tragic queen, but because it reflects the shadowed way we remember them all. Which reading speaks to you, darklings, or is the truth something else entirely? The shadows of history are long, and their stories are never simple. Some are etched not in ink, but in stone and blood. Until next time.